Hey guys, Wooperlol here, bringing you another League of Legends video. Today I wanted to go over an AP DPS spreadsheet that me and my friend Ryloy made. You can find the link below if you want to play around with the numbers, do different analysis with it, or just look at it. On this spreadsheet, you can find all the AP ratios, the base damage, and the cooldowns of all the AP champions in the game. With this video, I wanted to give you guys a basic primer on how to use the spreadsheet and different analysis that I've done. So the purpose of this spreadsheet is to try and model the damage that each champion does over time. There's a lot of different ways to approximate DPS, and each has their own strengths and weaknesses. We're going to go over each one in this video. One simple way to look at the damage and AP ratios of champions is to look at how much damage they do in one rotation. 1 Q, 1 W, 1 E, and 1 R. You can see that in column P and column Q. This tells you how much damage each champion does with one spellcast of each spell. This analysis, however, is a bit shallow because it doesn't account for the cooldowns of the abilities. Big ultis with long cooldowns will be weighed much more highly in this sort of analysis. We can account for this by dividing the damage that each spell does by its cooldown. You can see that in column N with the total DPS, and you can see the ratios in column O, the total RPS. Graphing the single target DPS, we get this graph. Looking at this graph, we can see that Cass, Karthus, and Zyra have very high sustained DPS, while champions like Sion, Lux, Zilean have low sustained single target DPS. Graphing the single target RPS, which is a measure of how much AP ratios affect each champion's damage, we get this graph. You can see that Cassiopeia has a very high RPS number. This is due to her E being a low cooldown and having a good AP ratio. However, this is just one way to analyze damage. Another way we can do it is to see how many spellcasts each champion gets off in a certain time frame. We can look at, say, how many spellcasts each champion gets off in 5 seconds. Look at the damage of those spells, the ratios of those spells, and add them all together. You can see that analysis in the Spellcast Analysis tab. Feel free to graph whatever you want and take a look at that data. Now obviously analyzing the single target DPS isn't that useful for a lot of AP champions. A lot of the AP champions have big AoE bursts, and we need to look at that. For that, you can look at the 3 targets hit spreadsheet. This spreadsheet tells us the damage and the ratios of each champion if they hit 3 targets instead of 1. If we graph the AoE damage that these champions do over 10 seconds to 3 targets, we find this graph. We can see that Cass has fallen down, and Karthus is now number 1. Other champions that have high AoE base damage are Vladimir and Zyra. We can graph the ratios to 3 targets over 10 seconds to see how well the champions scale into late game. You can see that Cass, Karthus, Orianna, and Zyra all have pretty high ratios. They have good scaling into late game. Champions that are known for bad damage in the late game, like Sion and Janna, are low on this graph. As with any analysis, there are some things I couldn't account for. One was missing spells. This analysis says that Karthus hits every single Q on 3 targets. This is of course unreasonable. You can tone down the damage in the spreadsheet if you want and look at how the graph changes. This analysis also doesn't account for the utility that each champion brings. You can see TF having very low damage, however he brings significant utility to a team. Remember, just because a champion is low on this graph doesn't mean that it's bad in late game. It does, however, mean they need to make up the damage difference through their utility. And finally, I didn't model Ryze's damage in this spreadsheet due to him working differently from all the other AP champions. If you want to see a model of his damage, I've included that in a link below. That's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to see more content from me, you can look at the link below to see an index of my work, and you can also subscribe to this channel. See ya!